Our next guest is an expert on career management, leadership, and digital marketing. Alongside that, he's written books about these subjects and more. And he now joins the Business Roadshow to talk more about leadership, career, and professional growth. Mr. Jonathan Yabut, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Stanley, for having me.
Let's talk about your book first. It's called Everything Will Be All Right. It's inspiring, it's positive. What was the basis, or what drove you to write this one?
This book was actually delayed for 2 years since it was intended to be launched before the pandemic. And the pandemic happened, all of us experienced anxiety, a lot of us lost our jobs or businesses. So the book focuses on how do you cope with those challenges in life? How do you bounce back in your career or in your businesses?
And how do you?
Two things. You have to stick to your why. And that is, if, let's say, you're selling shoes, you're not selling shoes. You're selling victory to people if they're using that for sports. If you're selling food, you're not selling, meals or rice. You're selling happiness for people. Most people tend to forget the why. And that's why it's hard for them to bounce back if ever they lose their path.
Well, a lot of us had the time to ponder on the why during the pandemic. A lot of people went into introspection, looking into themselves, taking a hard look at life, and taking stock of what matters. How big a part of that is in this book?
About 70%.
Okay.
I did experience anxiety as well during the pandemic. And as a motivational speaker, my original mindset was, if you feel depressed, if you feel stressed, you're weak. Right. That was my intention before. And then when suddenly it happened to me, I realized everyone copes in different ways.
But that's not healthy, right? Because you have to acknowledge all of these feelings.
Exactly. So I felt like, geez, I've yet so much to learn as a motivational speaker. And that I felt was something that I was grateful for, because now I get to see both sides of the coin. And hence I felt I had to publish that as well in the book.
Okay, so this book, Everything Will Be All Right, who does it speak to?
It speaks to a lot of millennials, a lot of corporate folks, a lot of entrepreneurs. And the idea is when you're losing that sense of motivation, you have to look elsewhere. So don't put all of your motivations in one basket. You have to spread it across different baskets, just like any financial instrument or assets. Don't put it in savings account, put it into equities, to bonds, etc. So if one of them you lose, you get to gain some of them in some assets also.
So some form of emotional diversification there, if you will.
That I will use that term.
Okay.
In my future talks.
Based on those who've read the book, which one or which portion or chapter did resonate with them?
Chapter 3 is about leadership. So a big part of it is about asking questions of what happens now since we're all in hybrid work mode. Right. How do you get to communicate with your boss if you don't get to see him or her every day? How do you make sure that you are visible even if you're no longer visible in the canteen or at the pantry? How do you raise your hand in meetings if everyone's on Zoom? So a lot of them are practical tips on how you can succeed even if we're not working in the same office anymore.
Okay, so this is just one of 3 books that will be featured in the Manila Book Fair. Tell us about that event.
That's right. So the Manila International Book Fair is happening on September 14 and 17 at the SMX Convention Center in Pasay City. And so many amazing authors are going to be there available to sign your books. I will also be there on September 15 at 6 p.m. to sign your books at booth 223.
And it's not just one book for you. I think there are 3 books that you're planning to launch in the fair.
Thanks for reminding me. This is the 4th book. So we got 3 other books available. The maiden one was launched 10 years ago. And that was From Grit to Great when I won The Apprentice. Okay, aside from being a writer, you're also a motivational speaker. You run a consultancy, it's JY Consultancy Ventures. You're also involved in a lot of speaking engagements. Talk to us now about your advocacy. Your advocacy in terms of helping professionals upscale, and not just upscale, but even upskill. So when I won The Apprentice, one of my mantras in life is how the Filipino is truly world-class. And how the Filipino isn't just someone who is sent abroad for their blue-collar talent, but also for their white-collar talent. And the reason why I do my motivational talks and my Booster Confidence workshop is because I think that the Filipino has so much to give, but it's just that we can't express ourselves well all the time. For example, in the Philippines, the economy right now, a lot of the booming is happening from the digital world. A lot of virtual assistants, the BPO industry. A lot of these folks are very talented, but they don't know how to express themselves when they have to engage employers who happen to be abroad. So one of our advocacies is, how can I level up the talent coupled with the right communication skills, for example?
Okay, let's talk about trends now. A lot of employers are looking for specific set of skills, if you will, for future employers. Now, how does one do that? Reinvent oneself to become more desirable to employers?
Okay. What we notice as a trend among employers and recruiters these days is if you're being accepted in a company as a marketing person, don't box out yourself as a marketing person.
Okay.
At some point, they're looking at your skills beyond designing posters or crafting marketing programs. They're considering maybe this person can be rotated in the next 2 years into sales.
Okay.
Or maybe we can rotate this person into finance. And that's the mindset these days of most employers. I want my teams to be well-rounded. So when you're looking to progress in the corporate ladder, consider that the options are also available in other paths, meaning you have to upscale yourself 360 degrees. So that means if you have a mentor, don't just let it be monopolized by your boss. Look for other senior leaders in the company, leaders in finance, leaders in sales. Talk to them from time to time and how you can perhaps pivot to other departments.
Yeah. Talk to us about a recent, the byword these days in a lot of organizations and businesses is, of course, soft skills. An observation, perhaps, that a lot of our workers or graduates do not possess these skills. What are the important soft skills that one must adopt?
This is the one thing that I wish most universities and schools will integrate into their curriculum. We don't have courses about leadership. Crafting PowerPoint slides, presiding how to conduct meetings, for example. Majority of the time, these are going to be the skills that you need. So what I always ask employers is make sure that there's an integrated part of what you offer to your employees.
Okay.
When someone's being interviewed in the job and they ask the question, what's in it for me if I enter this company, you have to mention these things to make yourself marketable to potential applicants as well.
Right. We do have a news item today. It came out from Job Street saying about 40% of the workforce in the next 10 years would be Gen Z, a totally different market. How are you targeting them? Since you've been writing all these books for millennials.
That's right. Yeah. We have to consider that the Gen Z is driven by social media and that their decisions in life are strongly influenced by what they see on social media. So maybe just a quick science behind this. The amygdala is what usually runs the decision-making of youngsters.
Okay.
Vis-a-vis your prefrontal cortex, which you and I have already fully developed at the age of 30 and above, it covers your rational decision-making. Problem is, the prefrontal cortex is not developed for Gen Zs, which makes them very emotional, which makes them very all about what's in it for me, what can I do.
So it's not a factor of culture?
Not all the time. And this is universal across research. The prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, and therefore, Gen Zs and Gen Y tend to be selfish, tend to be self-entitled. If you happen to be a leader, don't blame everything to how they act, because I'm sure all of us also had those moments when we were also young. So the goal is to understand, because they behave like this, what can I do to manage this Gen Z? One example is Gen Zs will always crave for constant feedback. Because the way they see likes, retweets, and shares... Affirmation is important to them. When they graduate from university, they expect the same thing also from their bosses. And so as a leader, how can I increase the frequency and consistency of my feedback, not just on an annual basis, but perhaps quarterly?
And do you see organizations being cognizant of this need as well?
Not all, but we are very hopeful that a lot of them recognize this. Whenever we conduct our workshops, a lot of them have this as their aha moment and say, we often think it's a given, but most of our leaders don't see it because they think it's just something that they have to follow because HR says it, not because I need to do it because it's what's best for my employees.
Lastly, Jonathan, talk to us about self-care now.
Self-care isn't being selfish. I need to highlight that. Most people tend to confuse both. If I want to spend my weekend to just lounge in my bed and spend 6 hours on Netflix, but still being mindful of my responsibilities, it's not being selfish. Because at the end of the day, you can only give what you have. You can't pour from an empty cup. If you're not fully relaxed, you will be able to bring that negativity when you go to work on a Monday, and therefore it's your responsibility to make sure that you're taking care of yourself.
All right, and all of that, of course, is in the book. Everything Will Be All Right. That's the assurance. How can one score of the copy? Where can they buy these? And invite our audience perhaps to the book fair.
Available in National Bookstore and fully booked in all bookstores nationwide. Available also in online stores. And of course, we'll see you on September 15 at the Manila International Book Fair in Pasay City.
All right, Mr. Jonathan Yabut, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Sam.
Good luck with the launch.